What's up, guys? Welcome to this episode of Beers and Breakdowns. And this one, we're doing one of the most requested movies out there, We Were Soldiers.
This is one of my favorite military movies
of
all time.
This one's really, really good. We do have to throw a warning out there. Guys, this is very trigger heavy. So if you have PTSD, be careful watching this one. This one is super trigger heavy. It's really intense. It's really graphic. And they made it so accurate. It's one of those few movies to where it's so accurate that it could be hard to watch for some. Myself included, at some points I had to fast forward to get through it. So just putting that out there. But here we are. We're going to check out We Were Soldiers and see what we think. Break down some of the scenes and then tell you what we think based on our experience in more current tactics, more current warfare, and see how it compares to what I think is a worse battle to be in Vietnam.
Yeah, I like this one because it shows kind of like the struggles and how difficult it is to fight, for one, in a jungle environment. Also, it's very mountainous, and it also does a great job of showing the advantage that the Vietnamese, like the Viet Cong, had with their tunnel system, and how quickly they can resupply. And not only with more troops, but also with more equipment, food, all that kind of stuff, and just hide out in the tunnels. And it was awesome at showing all that. And I could not imagine fighting in that environment.
The freedom of movement that they had with those tunnels was terrifying. The fact that they could just pop up out of anywhere and then they're on top of you. The acting was incredible. The character development was incredible. The cam was super dope. I had a very similar experience with our cam, who was always, to this day, I just had him reach out. He's actually, I'm pretty sure he's an FBI agent now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so our cam ended up being, going to either the FBI. He said he's in the 3-letter agencies now. So he definitely moved up to a badass position, but he was a badass when we were in war, and we had to actually pull him out of combat situations because he would just stand out in the open to get the picture, and it's like, hey, dude, you're gonna get shot. Get down. But he was doing his job. So let's jump into We Were Soldiers and check it out. See what you guys think. All right, so in this scene, automatically they initiate almost a perfect ambush. But something that we learned in SUT and something that I feel like they failed to do here, it could just be the depiction of the movie itself and not what happened. But when they initiate the ambush, they just immediately start moving on to target. And so a lot of them start getting killed. When we were taught in small unit tactics, we are all laying on the ambush line with an extra mag ready to go. So that way, as soon as we initiate the ambush, we have our heavy guns start, our heavy guns initiate. So if it's a 249 or 240, whatever your heaviest gun is, they're going to be in offset position. They're going to start that ambush. Everyone's going to wait for them to get into the kill zone, dump their full mag, and then do a mag change, and then get up and assault. And with the second mag, they're going to start doing well-aimed shots.
Well, yeah, and you would have, I think, what they called the mad minute, where everybody's firing, and then everybody stops, and, you wait, and then you move through, right?
Yeah, and the whole point of that is exactly for this reason.
Right.
So that way you don't get up and start initiating your ambush when they still have guys on their machine guns, guys ready to shoot back, because then you're going to take unnecessary casualties. And the whole point of you having that time to set up your ambush site and your kill zone is that you pick the best terrain to be the most advantageous for you.
You have the advantage. You don't want to give up the advantage right away out the gate.
Yeah, so what they did was give up the advantage because as soon as they initiated their assault, they got up and started moving. Right. So what Kurt said, you have your mad minute, everyone just dumps. You're trying to get as many kills as you possibly can, and then you could stop, break, have a moment of silence to see if there's anybody left, and then finish out your mag. You do a mag change, and then you get up, And as a unit, as an assault force, you push through to LOA, which is limit of advance. And then that means that you've gone all the way past the kill zone to the point where you know that there's no more enemy. You've cleared them all. You make sure they're all dead. Call out LOA, LOA, and then you clear back, take away the weapon systems, check their bodies, collect intel, do what you got to do, and then you move out. So I think it's just one minor mistake here is that they started moving too soon instead of doing a full mad minute or mag dump and killing as many people as they can. And it cost them because they started getting return fire.
Right. So another thing that's this scene kind of shows is like the Vietnamese. Also, if you go to more present day with the Afghan people, like this is taking place in the past. So it's showing that these people had many years, like they've been fighting for a long time. So they're honing these skills and honing their techniques, their TTPs, all their skills, they're honing these skills. And so when the Americans finally come in, and you'll see later on, they know the battle space, they know how to win in this environment. So it's the same thing you see in Afghanistan. They've been fighting for years and years. So when we get there, it's tough. They're already battle hardened.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one thing I like about this movie is that it shows also the Vietnamese side of it. They're not like portraying them as these monsters, right? It's like anyone that's been in combat understands that there's always two sides of the story. There's always two sides of the coin. We never look at the enemy and saying, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. We rarely do that. It's always, we're fighting for this, they're fighting for that. It doesn't make us better than them all the time. It doesn't make it, this like good versus evil. Sometimes it's just competing ideologies or whatever the case. So this movie does a good job at showing the Vietnamese as intelligent, capable human beings fighting for their families. It shows them looking at their photographs of their families. So the way I look at war is like two boxers get in a boxing ring. You're not going to be mad at the winner or the loser. Right. You both agreed to fight, and someone's got to win. Right.
And a lot of times we're going to their home turf. So I mean, you imagine if the roles are reversed, people are coming here. A lot of people are going to pick up arms, and you're going to fight regardless. So the good and bad, it's subjective, very subjective.
It's a lot of gray area, and whoever owns that turf is going to have the tactical advantage because they know the territory.
Air Cav.
This guy, man, killing it.
Morning, Sergeant Major. How do you know what kind of goddamn day it is?
Morning, Sergeant Major.
Pause, that was it. The salty ass Sergeant Major, dude, I love it. And now I just see him in the ranch, and I'm like, has he aged at all since this movie? He looks exactly the same.
What, he's in the show now?
Yeah, he's in the ranch. You never watched The Ranch with Ashton Kutcher?
No, I don't know what that is.
Are you serious?
Never heard of it.
Did you watch The Ranch, Abel?
What's
Are
The
you
Ranch?
kidding me? You guys are killing me.
Is it a porn?
You're killing me, Smalls.
What is it?
Not seen it.
It's Ashton Kutcher. It's him as the dad. They live on a ranch. They own a ranch. It's just a good old boy American
on what
awesome
network?
Show. It's on Netflix.
I've never. That's
Dude,
never
like
popped up on my you should watch this or
5
recommended.
seasons.
No, not
Come on,
once.
guys. Comment down below. Have you seen The Ranch? Do you love The Ranch?
Are you sure?
Dude, it's the best show. One of the best shows I've ever seen. It's got Ashton Kutcher in it.
All right, it's got the Sergeant Major in it?
And it's got Sergeant Major
The
as
best
Ashton.
show Ashton Kutcher ever did was Punked.
Bro, The Ranch is the best show Ashton Kutcher's ever done.
How about this?
To include that 70s show. It's the best show he's ever done, hands down.
Hold on. Do you remember when Ashton Kutcher took over for Charlie Sheen after he went crazy in 2.5 Men?
I do.
That was terrible.
Yeah, that was a huge
That was
tank.
horrible.
Out of all the tanks that Ashton Kutcher's had, The Ranch is not one of them.
All right, cool. Well, maybe I'll have to check it out.
If you enjoy whiskey and don't mind watching a good show over a glass of whiskey, The Ranch is for you.
Why? Oh, I like whiskey and I like good shows. Who doesn't like
all
those
they
two things?
do is drink whiskey on that show.
All right, I'll watch The Ranch.
And he's the dad of Ashton Kutcher.
Mad Men?
Yeah, but it's more like hard-working, middle-class men who sit around after a hard day and drink whiskey. And their life is going to shit because, life sucks.
Okay. You
Dude,
sold me.
I can't believe you guys haven't seen the ranch.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Drinking whiskey because life is hard?
No, the ranch.
I do
What
it
do you
every
mean
day.
drinking whiskey? 'Cause
Every day I
drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
I got whiskey in my coffee cup. So for everybody that thinks I've been drinking coffee for the past 2
got
episodes,
whiskey in
it's
my
not coffee. It's actually bullet bourbon, all right?
Yeah, see? You know half the story. Now you just got to do it on a ranch.
Oh, it's been a hard day, Ashton. How you doing? Good.
Oh, man.
How do you know what kind of goddamn day it is?
Exactly. It ain't getting any easier, you dumb shit.
There's only one thing wrong. And be sharp, man. We will be the best platoon in this battalion. Be ready in there. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Your officer's dead. What do you do? What do you do? All right. He hesitated. He's dead. What do you do? Get off the chopper. Get off of the chopper. All right. Hold off the third.
Great scene.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Because that's one thing in the military. You always need to know, and what I was always taught was you need to know the job below you and the job above you, right? Because you never know, like, when you're going to have to be called in, kind of like this. Or, you know, whenever you're going to do split team ops or whatever it is. So I like that. And he's like, thinking on your feet, like, you're dead. What are you going to do? You're in charge now.
And that's terrifying because a lot of times this is perfect for military because a lot of times I know it's like he's in charge. I don't have to think.
Right, yeah.
He's in charge.
I'm
So I
just
can
going.
sit here.
Ha!
As soon as he goes, I have to go. So I'm ready to go. I got my gun. It's loaded. I did all my
Yep.
PCTs, PCCs, PCIs. All I have to do is follow this guy. And I sit here not thinking about shit. I don't think about our mission.
Yep.
I don't think about contingencies. I don't think about anything. I sit here fat, dumb, and happy because when he moves, I have to move. And that's a problem.
Yep.
So the commander identifies that and says the guys are getting comfortable and they're relying on their leadership too much. Partly could be the leadership is too micromanaging, which
Right,
happens
yeah.
a lot. That's when you get a point where the team leader or whoever's in charge is so micromanaging that everyone shuts their brains off because every time they think, they get their dick slapped. So if the commander identifies that and says, you're dead, now all of a sudden I'm so stuck in the fact that I wasn't thinking
Right.
that it shocks me. It delays my response because now I have to think, oh, wait, what was I doing? Where am I? What is our mission? Where am I trying to go? And then it's too late.
Yep.
So it conditions people to say, okay, even though he's in charge, I need to know what he's supposed to do. And then I need to know what I'm supposed to do in response to that. And then what the next guy down is supposed to do. Like Kurt said, the guy below me, the guy above me. So that way if the guy above me goes down, I already know what we're supposed to do. I'm in charge now. The guy below me goes down. All right, I already know what you're supposed to do. I'll take up your role and then I'll do your job. And so the commander identified that and started plucking people out and instantly identified a weakness in his crew.
Yep.
And it was the leader.
So a lot of that also comes from your mission planning, right? If everybody is paying attention during the mission brief, you should know the actions, what's supposed to happen, right? So it's supposed to take the guesswork out of it. They say no plan survives first contact, right? But you should at least have a loose idea of what's going to happen. And as they always tell you in the military, a bad plan is better than no plan at all. Because if you just sit there and you're like, more people are going to get hurt. Get everybody off of the helicopter, get down to the ground, and then figure it out from there.
Right.
So come up with some sort of plan, is better than nothing. But when that guy froze up, that's why I like this guy. Hal, what's his name? Hal Moreland or something like that? Anyways, the commander on here, what's his name?
I don't remember.
What's
I like
the
to
actor's
just call him
name?
the commander. What's the actor's name on here?
Mel Gibson?
Mel Gibson. All right. So that's why when Mel Gibson's character comes up and he's like, you're dead, right? I love that tactic. It's like, what are you going to do? It keeps people thinking.
I want you to draw fresh socks from supply. Keep your feet dusted with powder.
Everybody check each other's feet like Godbolt and me.
Pause.
Now that young man's a leader. Yes, sir.
It's almost like they should have had a foot care kit.
I know, right? What
It's-
would prevent that?
It's like we thought about
A
that.
little bit of moleskin, maybe.
Yeah. It's like we've rucked enough in our lives to know how blisters form, when they form, and what you could do to prevent
And what do
them.
you tell them to put on?
Powder.
Fresh socks and powder.
It's almost like we sell brand new socks and powder. Interesting. There's a method to this madness,
We've been
ladies
there
and gentlemen.
We've done that.
When you've rucked your feet off, then you know how to fix your feet or prevent your feet falling off. Because there's nothing worse than a big old fat heel blister reminding you that your foot is on fire every time you take a step, and it feels like needles puncturing your heel.
The worst thing, and especially when it starts to happen and you're in some long movement and you know, like, I cannot stop the entire element just to fix my blister that's forming.
You're on that train whether you like it or not.
And so, like, whenever you get a chance to stop and you're finally just like, please, let me hope it's not that bad, and you take your sock off and you're like, oh, fuck.
This is massive
Because you
blister.
know, when there's a blister or when you're like where this guy is, like, you're not going to fix that. It's too late.
Then you're just doing
That
damage
sucks.
control.
Yeah, right? You're just trying to put as much moleskin over it and just deal with it.
And if you guys think that blisters on your feet, you're like, oh, I'm going to tough through it. Because I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of you guys on the old interwebs think you're harder than woodpecker lips. And I promise you, you ain't.
Tiny blister. You know, for me, it was right between my two toes. I remember in the trek, which is in SFAS, the trek is a 20 to 26 to maybe 30 mile. It changes all the time, hike. But you're doing it at the very end. It's the last thing you have to do. But I remember my toes rubbing together. I got this small blister between my two toes, and that's the one that almost took me out. It was so freaking painful, and that's when I stopped, and I tried to address it, and it was so cold I couldn't get my boot and socks back on. But that tiny little blister, to think that almost took me out, crazy.
Yeah.
If I would have let that get to me, I wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. Because every time that foot strikes and you feel that pain, it rushes through your entire body. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to ignore this. Like, it's your foot, and you got 45 to 50 pounds on your back pressing into that foot, and now you have this wound that's like reminding you every step that you're in immense amount of pain. And it starts to mess with you psychologically.
Yeah, that's the big part.
Yeah, so like, yeah, you can get through it. Mile 1, you can get through it a couple miles. You know, mile 2 of blister, 3, 4, 5, 10 miles into having that blister, your psychological mindset, like psychologically, you start to take a real downward spiral.
It's not the blister anymore.
Right.
It's like, that blister becomes your entire life.
Yes. Why am I here? I'm leaving my family. I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not good enough. I'm afraid. Why is this pain bothering me so much? I look at other people. They're not in pain. Everything starts to just tear you down, and it all comes from not taking care of your feet. So go check out the Foot Care Kit, because at the end of the day, we sell it for a reason.
Yeah.
It helps.
It does.
Everyone's like, "Wow, you guys want to just make money." It's like, no.
It's not a commercial. It just popped up in the movie.
It just popped up in the movie, but at the end of the day, we're here to help you get selected, because if we could help you get selected, then we can continue to help people, and that's how we grow. It's not about taking $20 from you. It's about the fact that we can help you grow, get selected, be part of our environment, you know, replace our positions in the regiment. So, you know, take it for what you will. And if you don't believe in that advice, I'm going to tell you a secret. You don't have to do it. It's that simple.
You can put it together yourself.
Yeah.
You're going to get all the same stuff.
Right. All right, pause. So just going back to, switching it off
This is my safety.
to full auto. Look at, you paused it right on his finger, selecting it to full auto. That was like a 1 second transition, and that's stupid.
So yeah, and so back in the Vietnam era, they had the full auto, which was an issue with these guns.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Because they were jamming all the time. People were just blowing through ammo.
Yeah, and their mags were like that big.
Oh, full auto on a 30. Even if you had a 30
like
round
burst.
mag, that's like 3-4 seconds, maybe.
Yeah. You should never fire on full auto.
That's a last resort.
I don't even know. I think ours had them.
Ours did, yeah. We had single, burst, and full.
I've never used full auto except for ammo expenditures, just trying to get rid of ammo.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for fun. You always, if you're going to be an SF guy, you got to do the dual wielding full autos. That's the only reason to ever use full auto is dual wielding full autos.
Try to look cool.
You try to look cool. You try to take a selfie. It's not that exciting. You're over it in 5 seconds. You never fire on full auto. You can't aim. It's unwieldy. It just, the recoil just kicks it way up until you have to literally fall into it before you start pulling the trigger.
Right.
Just to rebalance it.
Like if it goes click, you're falling forwards.
Yeah.
Because you're anticipating that shot.
Yeah. It's just completely pointless. You always want it on semi. You can fire plenty fast enough to just get those well-aimed shots. Nobody's using full auto. That shit's ridiculous. But the main point I want to talk about in this scene is what we were talking about earlier, is how bananas it is to have an enemy where you don't know where their tunnels are, and they have full tunnels to access their battlefield. They know the terrain. They know the tactical advantage of every location. They know everything about the terrain, and they have tunnels. The Americans are at a huge disadvantage when it comes to fighting in this situation, in this movie. And so we like to think, well, we have aircraft and all that stuff. Yes, that kind of balances the scales a little bit. But again, that's only when they're fighting on the surface and they have the ability to not be on the surface.
It balances a little bit. Like they can transport the American troops from here to there, but they've got tunnels, so they can transport their troops from here to there without being noticed, you know?
Yeah, and we're using napalm in this, which is a pretty sweet advantage, which we can't use anymore. But at the same time, they can go underground and not deal with the napalm.
Yeah, it doesn't affect them.
So it's genius on the Vietnamese to have these underground tunnels. It's just amazing. And then to go up against that would absolutely be terrifying. Imagine you think you're controlling a movement, and then all of a sudden a Vietnamese tunnel and a whole fighting force starts popping up behind you.
Yeah.
Well, you can't anticipate that.
Where
You
the
can't
hell
plan
that
for
come
that.
from? It's like Mario popping up.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden you're at a disadvantage and you're screwed.
I made a mistake in there, Abel.
What?
I said that we had semi 3-round burst and full auto. We only had semi and full auto, right?
Yeah.
Or would you like to fix it?
Fix it.
Then say it to the camera.
I
He just did.
And then-
5630.
You're telling it to me.
5630.
All right, so we had, I already fucking did this.
He already
I'm not
did.
doing it again. I said it to
5630.
Sean. I looked at him the same way I looked at him the first time. Like I wanted to make love to him. And I said, so we had semi and full auto.
Thank you. 5630.
I know the timestamp.
All right, pause.
It's wild.
Dude, to try and like think of tactics in that situation. Like it's one thing to sit, almost like the Vietnamese were trying to plan out the tactics. They had a patrol base, underground. They're planning. They're getting intel on where the Americans are. The Americans are on the fly trying to figure out what to do, the best place to put the M60, the machine gun, how to maneuver on the enemy while taking contact, while taking casualties, while at a disadvantage, and then having to make good tactical decisions is insane.
Not only that, but not only is he taking casualties in contact, he can see the enemy. Like
Yeah,
they are
right
right
there.
there. So imagine the pressure, like get the M60 here, get that thing going now. Like
And
they need that.
And their only cover is like a fallen tree.
Right, yeah. Like you are
So that's
a
good
stone's throw from your enemy.
Yeah.
That is wild. Like
So-
you can talk to each other.
That's good for like maybe 3 people. What
Right.
about the rest of your platoon that doesn't have a tree?
Right.
So-
Everybody's trying to make themselves as small as possible at that point and trying to hide. And that's one of those things where it's like, you're trying to get the best advantage and get your firepower where it needs to be, but people are also trying not to die at that point.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where it's like you kind of have to throw caution to the wind and know that your best chance of survival is not making yourself as small as possible and hiding, but it's actually returning fire and getting into position.
Just that wall of fire. And imagine the psychological effect when every time a helicopter lifts off, it's full of bodies
Yeah.
of your buddies, and then you're replacing those bodies with yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a good chance that you're going to be on that next flight.
Or, and you're watching it go, and you're like, people that are wounded, and you're like, fuck, man, like, I kind of almost wish that was me,
Yeah.
right? Because I might not make it out of here. This
Yep.
it's one of those movies that really shows the realities of war, and just like shows you that, you know, a lot of people have this romanticized vision of what war is, and I think a lot of that comes from movies and video games. But once you know, like, war is hell, honestly. Like, people, they ask for it, but they don't know what they're asking for.
Right. Yeah, this is a good depiction of the worst of war.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's easy to look at certain movies when we're winning and be like, we're just shooting them up, we're winning, we have the aircraft. It's easy to be in a war situation when you're on the winning side.
Yep.
But when it's the losing side, and I always say this, is like, I always felt it in my bones in contact, in combat, when I was the hunter and when I was the hunted. And when you become the hunted, it's the worst fucking feeling on the planet. When you know another human being, not an animal, not a machine, a human is watching you.
Trying to kill you.
Trying to kill you, and you don't know where they are. You know that they're fully capable. You know that they're planning and they're watching and they have oversight on you. It's the worst feeling. It's like, it literally feels like a deer being tracked by fucking Cameron Haynes. It's like your time could come at any moment.
Right, yeah.
And it's the shittiest feeling. So that switches, and then all of a sudden you're the hunter and you're in the best position possible, and now you're the man and you're the alpha and you're this lion. But then all of a sudden the wrong decision or just circumstance, and you're back to being the deer caught in Cameron Haynes' sights. So
it's a game of chance, man.
It's a game of chance, and it flip-flops. You know, so that's what people don't get, is like, yeah, you could be American, you could be Green Beret, Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6, Delta. It doesn't matter what your unit is. Every one of us that plays combat is going to be on the losing side at some point. I mean, Andy was SEAL Team 6, got shot.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
it happens.
the shit's no joke. And it could be luck, it could be circumstance. Your clock could get fucking checked anytime. It's like your card could get punched anytime.
Yep.
I'll play for you.
Ah!
Who the hell are you? I'm a reporter, sir. Joe Galloway, UPI. How's it going, sir? Well, we've been flying to the board since last night. We're greatly outnumbered.
All right, pause.
You got more enemy coming too, sir. So,
I just thought that was awesome. Like he was like, "Yeah, I want to get on. Let's go." And he's like, "If you're dumb enough to come," he's like, "Hell yeah." And then he gets there, he's like, "Oh shit."
Yeah. He sees it gets real.
Yeah.
Real quick.
And like that's what happens. You realize, like, hey, you thought you were on the winning team.
Yeah.
Not here, you're not.
You realize real fast that shit goes both ways.
Yeah. Like, this is a two-way range, and right now you're on the losing end. The U.S. isn't on the losing end, because we could just nuke the whole country.
Right.
The U.S. is going to win. But
you in this little patch of grass.
this battle could be lost.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything for the United States, but everything to everyone that's there.
Yeah. That's the crazy part about it.
Yeah. It's like the U.S. could just be like, that battle was a wash.
Yeah.
But to people that are there, to the lives that
It's all
are
relative.
Yeah, that means everything to them, and they're in a losing fight as U.S. soldiers, and that's something that we're not used to. We're used to always being in the winning shot, but again, people don't get it. Like my first deployment, I saw Green Berets coming in with bullet holes all throughout their bodies, just getting worked on, and every pump on their chest was blood squirting out their backs, bullet holes through the backs of their legs, bullet holes all through them, just on the losing end. As a country, we're winning, but that gunfight that those two guys were just in, that they were getting their fucking asses rocked. And for them, that was the only gunfight that mattered.
Yeah, for sure.
For one of them that died that day, it was his last deployment. He was about to retire. And That was the
Sucks.
only gunfight that matters for him. It was the only gunfight that matters for his family.
Yep.
But for the U.S., we just moved on.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee his family didn't just move on.
Jesus.
Artillery on previously established targets. Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Save your ammo! Cease fire!
All right, pause. First of all, he's a badass in Sons of Anarchy. And it sucks when we lost him.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch Sons of Anarchy at
Of
least?
course. Who was he?
He was his best friend. It's been so long since I've seen the show. I forget his name.
Oh.
His best friend, he got killed in jail to
Yeah.
protect him.
Yeah. I can't remember his name.
Opie.
Opie. Yeah.
It was Jax's best friend, Opie. Yeah, dude, at least you guys watch Sons of Anarchy.
Of course.
All right, we'll watch The Ranch
We did
next.
that for Halloween.
Yeah, we did years ago. But anyway, so one thing that people may not know is the loom rounds for mortars. Is we have the same mortar rounds, but we have a loom for that exact scenario. And so they go off and then it lights this, like, I don't know if it's phosphorus or whatever burns, but it's on a parachute. So it just floats down. So for however many, bright as shit. So for however many seconds, you get that full light up of, you know, the area underneath it. And this is the perfect situation to use that.
Dude, how freaky would that be, though?
You
As
think
soon
you're
as it
by
lights
yourself?
up and they're right freaking there.
Dude, that's insane.
That's wild.
And I imagine that was a regular occurrence in
Oh,
this time.
for sure. In areas like this, for sure.
And that's one of the cool things that they say too, is he said previously established positions in Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. And it's good that, you know, you could do that as the mortarman for the mortarman team, is to have that recce and be like pre-established spots. And then everybody knows it. So that way it's like, hey, because as the mortar positions is hard, because you have to perfectly calculate, okay, from here, let's go 100 meters south or 100 meters north. So to have pre-established positions that you could just call out and get those mortars firing as soon as possible, because it takes, you know, some 5-6 seconds for the mortar to impact. And if you're off, then they have to readjust. I mean, that time adds up. And if you're taking contact, it could be too long.
Yeah, that was wild.
All right, so already they're showing that the Americans are starting to adapt their tactics. So they know that they're starting to creep up on them. So what do? They put some people out and hide them and camouflage them, so that way they can get past them or get almost all the way up to them, and they have like this early system. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not even going to claim to know exactly what the point was for those guys up there. It makes sense to have some hiding. So that way you could basically lure them into a trap and then have some different angles on them. They stay low. You notice that they don't get up, so that way they're not crossing fire.
Right.
But it's still, the whole point for me was that they're changing their tactics already.
Right.
So they've been on ground for maybe a day or two, and they're already adjusting their TTPs to match what the Vietnamese guys are doing, and, you know, to try and win that combat.
Yeah, and I mean, that's important. You have to kind of evolve, right? Like, you come out there with a plan. Obviously, your plan's not working, so you can't just stick to the same plan that's not working. You have to evolve and change your tactics. So.
All right. And one of the things, guys, we missed it. We didn't talk about it, but the reason that they're out there segregated by themselves is because the officer was super hua, and he went chasing a spotter down. and all his team had to follow him, and so they ended up getting segregated, and then they're stuck in the segregated position. The team leader ends up getting killed, and then they're stranded out by themselves. So he separates the element because he goes and chases them. They kind of alluded to this when Mel Gibson was like, that guy wants awards, and then they make him the super hua guy. So he makes a stupid decision, but he ends up dying as a hero because he still is trying to do the right thing. He's trying to be super tough. He's trying to take care of his guys. He's doing the best he can. Unfortunately, he's just a little too motivated to prove himself instead of following his training, and puts his guys in a bad position. But he does it with all good intentions, so it's not like he was a bad guy. But that's why this unit is separated from the rest. And they have to go and save them, but they can't because then the main unit gets overwhelmed with contact. So these guys are separated by themselves all night long, and that's when they have to adjust their TTPs to try and survive the night. So they're literally just trying to survive an overwhelming force and being ambushed and overrun because they're completely outnumbered.
That's frightening.
Yeah, terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
When we got to the end of that valley, that first night, I remember I told you the Rangers were supposed to be up in the high ground, and then 2-1 was supposed to be with us, and then 2-1 took a casualty, so they weren't there. Rangers never showed up for whatever reason, so we were in this end of the valley that's supposed to be the most dangerous part by ourselves, and all night long I was just like waiting to die. I was like, this is it. We're surrounded. I knew it. I could feel it, and it was a shitty feeling.
That sucks.
And I was in an armored vehicle, you know, so it's like there wasn't many armored vehicles. We only had like 3 or 4, and we set them up in this like mini OP. And we're like, all right, obviously the gunners need to be up and awake at all times throughout the night, but it was still this eerie, creepy feeling. We knew we had a casualty already. We had 1 KIA. We knew we were in the most dangerous part of the valley, which we'd been fighting day in and day out just to get to, and now we're in the heart of it by ourselves as a team. And it was like, this sucks. And on top of that, the main support was our vehicles, and we're running out of fuel. Yeah, and we couldn't get refueled from airdrops because it was too kinetic. And we were already past that point of the drop-offs of the fuel resupplies. So the only way to get resupplies is to get the vehicles back. So we're literally sitting in the vehicles, using them as cover, waiting for them to run out of fuel, surrounded by the enemy.
Jeez,
and it was a terrifying night, dude. And my team sergeant wanted to keep going. He wanted somehow for them to get us refueled so we can keep pushing. And then everyone else is like, you guys got to get the fuck out of there. And so all night, not only are we sitting in this bad position, but we're waiting to find out if we're going to push forward or pull back. Knowing the smart decision was to pull back, but we don't know what command is going to say.
Your local leadership wanted to go forward.
But local, like our teams aren't wanting to go forward. So it was like all night we're just waiting, like who's going to win? And then the morning came and we're like, what are we going to do? And they're like, you guys need to pull back. And literally our gas gauges were on E. So the vehicles were about to just shut off. I was like, what are we going to do when the vehicle shut off? Hoof it back miles through enemy territory? And then when we did start to leave, they already replanted all the IEDs. So Travis was re-pulling up IEDs out of the same spot that he had already pulled them out on the way in.
Dang.
So all the way back, every single IED location was refilled with more IEDs.
That sucks.
It was a nightmare, dude. So they call Broken Arrow. And that's what, like, everybody's coming in. That's a wrap.
Send it all. Danger close, doesn't matter.
Send everything you got. The whole theater's coming in because you're about to lose a whole squad, whole battalion, whatever it is you got is going down. And the shitty part is they were trying to pull leadership out of there, but he wouldn't leave. So that way they could just be like, well, that battle was lost, and we lose whoever's there. Because they didn't want to send everybody and admit defeat, I guess, it seemed like it got political because as soon as he called Broken Arrow, it cut to a scene and the guy's like, well, there's no denying it now. So a lot of times they kept calling for Mel Gibson, the leader, to be like, we need you to come back and have a meeting. We need to pull you out. And he was like, no, I'm not leaving without my men.
Right, yeah.
So it's like,
it's
shady, dude. It's scary. And it's like the fact that, you know, we could put our soldiers and be like, well, you guys aren't worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like now we see one soldier as being worth anything we have to do.
And that sucks for everybody else on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, imagine that if you're other gunfights that are going on, someone else calls Broken Arrow, you just lose all aircraft. That could have been the end of your winning.
Yeah.
And now a whole battle over here is being lost because someone else had to call Broken Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like in this large theater war, it's like assets are assets. You only have so many. But I just thought it was interesting when they were like, oh, we're beating the Americans. And it's like, you haven't touched our capabilities.
Yeah.
And then he says Broken Arrow, and all of a sudden it's like, hold my beer.
Yeah. I thought it was crazy from a pilot's perspective when you saw they did the one shot from the aerial shot, and you got to see like the one went through the napalm and the other one's dropped bombs, so there's smoke everywhere, and you got the other one coming in on a gun run who now can't see anything because all the smoke and everything, but he's just got to still, you know, go off of the coordinates he was told and hope that he's not hitting the American forces and all. It's just complete chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It's on so many levels. It's wild.
Yeah, yeah, and like we've called danger close, and I've been in a danger close experience, and it was terrifying.
I bet.
The floor was shaking as the rounds were hitting the ground with 30 Mike.
Oh, really?
And he was doing, and I just remember the guy, like the pilots, like, you guys need to move back, and we're like, no, we're not moving. We have a good position. We're gonna go reassault. You need to hit them. And they're like, no, please move back. You're too close. Move back. You're too close. And we're like, no. And we have this. I remember somebody was like, that's not how pilots talk. They wouldn't ask you to do that. Like, bitch, I got this recorded. The whole conversation is recorded on comms.
What kind of aircraft was it?
It was the Apache.
Yeah.
Was doing strafing runs
Okay.
on them, and they had the 30 Mike. So if you go back and look at the video I posted like 2 years ago now, it shows them shooting at the bad guys and how far off they were initially. Mm-hmm. And now I realize why they want us to move back, because if they were off the same direction, the opposite direction, they would have been hitting us.
Right, yeah.
So they're not dead nuts on every time. They have to hone in where the shots are going to land. So the bad guys were right here, they do. And then it's landing, boom, 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 boom. And you're like, oh shit, readjust, fire. Doom. And then ba, and they nail them. But if they were off the opposite direction, this is where we were.
Oh.
So that's why they were like, you guys move back.
Yeah, that sucks for the pilot.
Yeah, so the one thing I'll caveat is I don't know if I have to go back and listen to the recording if they were relaying through the JTAC that we needed to move back, or if it was direct comms with the pilot. It's most likely our JTAC at the time that was relaying to us that they want us to move back.
Yeah.
So you guys got to keep in mind, not everyone is just communicating with pilots. That's not how it works. You have the JTAC for a reason. The JTAC's job is to coordinate fires with the aircraft. You have stacks of aircraft. Imagine coordinating all these stacks of aircraft and every soldier just has contact with them. It would be an absolute disaster for all those aircrafts. They would be murdering people.
Right, yeah.
So that's why you have to have one chain of command, essentially, which is your JTAC, to communicate those, who's specifically trained on how each aircraft works, what they need to know, where they need to fire. So you think Green Berets are just communicating with all the pilots? No, we're not. We're not. That's not our job. And there's multiple pilots in one single stack that all have multiple capabilities. So when I say, hey, they're telling us to move back, I remember some comments like, that's not how pilots talk. It's like, well, bitch, I wasn't talking to the fucking pilot. All right? I was talking to the JTAC, who's communicating to all the pilots. and coordinating which pilot is the best one to do what we need to do.
Yeah.
Many men have gone. Lay me down in the cold, cold ground. Where the many men.
Dang, that final scene was so sick,
Yeah.
dude. It was like they're about to basically go to their deaths because they're outnumbered. They had the low ground. The enemy had the tactical advantage. And out of nowhere comes the hand-picked pilot to save the day and just lay waste.
Yep. Wild.
So dope.
It's awesome.
Save the day. Just such a badass scene, such a cool movie. I loved it. A great, great scene. And then in the end, he ends up paying respects to his enemy. And he saw the flag at the last highest point of the hill. And what did he say? He said, if you ever wonder what Custer felt like, Colonel Custer, what does it take the hill? He's like, I bet he knew.
Yeah.
And sorry if I'm ruining that, but the point is that he just respected his enemy. Because they had the courage to stand there and fight.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, that's what you have to do, man.
And
It's
they
like,
put up one hell of a fight,
Yeah.
too. Like, you have to respect that.
absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
So, all right, guys, we hope you liked that episode of Beers and Breakdowns. We were soldiers. You guys were asking for this one for a long time. There it was, an amazing movie. Mel Gibson's a total badass. This was a fantastic film, super intense. So, hope you enjoy. We're going to get some shut-eye, and then we're headed to SHOT Show. See some of you guys in Vegas. Peace.